Here it is. So this is the Morphe Eyebrow Gel. We're going to use their products. And then their pencil is what I usually use. Most of the time, I do use pomade quite a bit. But this is what it looks like. I use the shade Chocolate Mousse. All right, let's do this. So first I go in and I brush them out first, just so that I can get my hairs going like the direction I want and just brush them out. I really need to trim mine, but I'm growing them out as much as I can. The trick with pomades is I feel like when I first started doing it, the biggest mistake I made was I went in like too hot and heavy. Like I barely go in here and brush my brush on it. Like I'll kind of just go in very lightly and press it. And then I always start out in the front, like sort of the front, like almost like midway. And I just do little light strokes. Do you see how you can barely see there's any product? Sometimes, like I always say it, but less is more. Go in lighter, because if you go in too heavy, it's going to look like you're drawing them on, and that's not what you want it to look like. And again, I just keep doing that, and I like to start like in the bottom and just start creating my arch. But like you can see, I'm not putting a lot of pressure. Like I'm barely going in with that brush, so it makes them look natural, and just like little hair strokes, like it's filling them in. And I'm not pressing, I'm letting like the brush do the work. The biggest thing is too, is you don't have to be super precise. Like if you mess up, it's not a big deal. Like don't stop, because you can go in with concealer and clean it up. So I'm just gonna kind of give a little bit more detail, like wherever I don't have a lot of hair is where I'll kind of come in and press maybe a little bit harder just to create that line that I want. And then I leave it. So I create the bottom, don't touch it. I'm gonna jump over to the other side and do the same thing. So I do my bottoms first, and then I go in and create the top, and then I fill them in. But my biggest like advice that I would give is just go in lightly. Pomades are so creamy, especially depending on which ones you get. And don't start in the front. I feel like if you start in like the very front here, see how I don't have any product, that I started it right here and brought it back? Leave that front part blank so it doesn't look too choppy. Like leave the front alone and just focus on that back part where you're actually like creating the brow. I'm trying to clean this off. This isn't my favorite brush, but we're working with it. And then same thing, like light pressure. I kind of just let the brush do its thing. If it kind of like smears out, like I don't care, because I can go in and fix it. So just keep creating your steps, little strokes, kind of like you're just painting or wanting it to barely touch the canvas. This one I have to like kind of create or like bring down a little bit more to match this side, but I'll clean them up. Okay, so we got our bottoms, bam. And then whatever I've left on my brush on this bottom is where I'll kind of come in and very lightly start creating that line across with whatever's left on the brush. I didn't put anything else on it. I just want to kind of create that symmetry between the two, and then I can brush it away when I'm done. But this is just like my guide. So I kind of drag it out, but still there's no product on my brow except underneath. So I'm going to go back in, and now we're going to start on the top. So the top is where I like kind of still struggle just because my brows are so uneven. So really getting that shape is important. But I still do the same method. So where I started down here, where I started that line, I start up here. So this whole front section we're not touching, and I'm going to bring it in and do that exact same thing. Light pressure, don't push so hard. The brush will do everything for you if you let it. Same with eyeshadow. I feel like people are so rough, and the brush will like do everything for you if you just apply light pressure. And up here, I have to go a little heavier and kind of like a little bit more pressure just to get that line and that shape. So I can go in after and like brush it out, but I just want to make sure I'm making them somewhat darker on the top to compensate for the eyebrow I don't have up there. So wherever you're compensating for, like if you're missing hair, you can go in a little heavier. But make sure you're kind of like feathering it out so you keep that natural look to it where they don't look like you just drew them on. Same over here. I'm going to come in right where I started that other line and just follow wherever the top of your hairline is. Like you can kind of see, even if you're missing hairs, you can kind of see where your natural like little hairs come out, and just keep dragging it all the way. So like right there, I have like no hair. So I'm kind of like creating it from nothing, but I just follow it with like that same swoop motion. All right, so all we've done is kind of, see how this one's a little bit more arched? I'm gonna come in here and just kind of create a little bit more oomph right there, okay? And then whatever I need to fix after, I'll fix. And I'm just gonna kind of create the tail, but we'll fill everything in. So now we've created our bottom and our top. And then I'm gonna go in at this point and just kind of brush wherever my bottom line is. I'm gonna brush upwards to it. And then I come in on the top and brush downwards with it a little bit, just so it kind of like smooths it out before I go in and fill them in. And again, that way it just looks more natural. And so now I'm taking what's on my brush and just going in between those two lines. So now is where I'm gonna go in and fill these bad boys in. This one spot, I'm probably gonna have to use a pencil. So like right here where I can't get it to like fully like draw in or like fit is when I'll take my Morphe pencil, if I can find it in this mess of stuff. Didn't I take it out? Oh, it's right here. So you can get the kit off Morphe for like 16 bucks, and I really like it, but if I notice that I'm like not being able to fill it in, I'll just take a pencil, because the pencil will like physically draw it in for me. And then on my tips, I like to use a pencil because it's going to give me that like perfect point right there where I want. Because I don't have hair, it kind of like fills it in for me. Okay, so we got that. Go back to filling in so you can kind of bounce between the pomade and the pencil if you need to. And just make sure I fill them in. It's going to look heavy. I kind of fill them in a little heavier. Again, if you don't have hair, you kind of want to. And then I just let it sit. We still haven't touched the front yet. I'm going to jump over to the other side and fill that side in too. So come over here. And usually when I go in to start filling them in, so I started my lines here, but I start filling it in backwards. So you're kind of creating that like ombre effect, and your eyebrows don't look so placed because you're creating all those different shadows to your eyebrows. And then I clean off my brush just a little bit, whatever's on here. I kind of pinch it together and swipe it a few times. Like, look how much product. I think people just don't realize like how much it actually picks up, and they go in so heavy. I'm gonna take my spoolie first and start pulling, but I use just the tip of the brush. So where I drew that line, I'm just starting to come in and kind of drag it across and up a little bit right there. See? So whatever that little line I created, I'm just taking the very tip of it because you don't want to remove too much product. And then I start to go like back and forth because it's going to drag everything that I had right there to the front. So same thing, you just like kind of push with that line a little bit. And I'm not going too far back to where I did everything. That little tiny line that we created is creating enough of that shadow in the front that I don't really have to go in with too much more product. All right, now I'm gonna go in with the concealer. So I do still have like some stuff I wanna do, but this is where I wanna make sure my shape is on point before I do anything else. So I like to use a concealer, or especially if I know I'm gonna be doing a makeup look, which I'm gonna be on the beauty page, I'm gonna go in with my P. Louise base because this will help when I do my colors on my eyes. I'm gonna go in with this brush, which I forgot, this one actually I need to wash because it's not very flat. So I'm going to come in with this side, and then I start in the front with my concealer, and I start almost like over, like I exaggerate it a little bit over into this front, and then I slowly work my way over. And this is just going to kind of detail out your brow. It's going to clean up any little mistakes I made while I was shaping them. And this kind of gives you the chance to correct it and make them as even as you possibly can. And if you see how like I kind of hit some of my little hairs, you can go in with your pencil after and clean that up. So it's kind of just like a trial and error. You can keep messing with it. And then I just kind of look to make sure that my like height, my arch is the same. A good point too that I meant to mention is like when you're creating your brow, take like your pencil and where your nose flares out. So right here is where you want your brow to start. So like where your little flare is of your nose, you want your brow to start at that point. So I'm right on point right there. When you tilt your brush from that flare right through your eye, that's where you want your arch to be. So like if I go right through my eye, that's where you want your arch. And when you flare it out to like the corner of your eye, that's where you want your eyebrow to stop. So if you don't have hairs, that's a really good guide. You can kind of like line it out, take your pencil before you go in with your pomade, before you go in with anything, and you can kind of take your pencil, run it up, swoop. Take your pencil, run it up, create your arch point, and then take your pencil, create it out. Okay. So obviously in this front, I don't have a lot of the hairs. So this is where I kind of take my pencil up through so like I can kind of see. And then I start to create those little hair strokes right here so that when I do go in, they're even. So like when I go in on this side, I know it's going to stop here. When I go in on this side, now it's going to stop there and I can fill it in. Makes sense? And I know that they're even. And same on here. I'm going to kind of fill them in a little bit more and then I'll go in with my powder and kind of smooth them out. But I want to make sure that they are as even as I can possibly make them. Which this one looks a little wonky. Okay. So I cleaned them all up. I'm going to come back in with the brush in any place. I'm just going to kind of drag down the concealer a little bit so I can see. You don't want to have too much concealer up under your eyebrow because then it's just going to not look natural at all. So I just go through once it's kind of dried down and drag any of the extra product. I make sure that they're even, so I drag that concealer through so I see that they're symmetrical or as close to as twins as I can get them. Okay, and then I go in with my pencil. So one more time, I'm going to take this and just any little spots that underneath here that I just need to like sharpen up or just make a little bit more crisp. See right there where I kind of hit it with the concealer? You can just take your pencil, tighten up your line. I really don't touch the top too much. I let that stay, but I just run this right here and then create that point out here. Make sure your tip is on point, as even as you can. And that's it. Now that I just created some of those little hairs and I kind of just go up and down to create that fade. So like right here, just go up and down in the front. I don't push too hard. Like I said, I don't want to lose the product. I just want to blend it down so it looks as natural as possible. And voila, I need to find my fluffy brush. This is when I would go in now and take my fluffy one and I kind of drag. So whatever concealer line I just had right there, I drag it through. So I kind of like round it off so they're not super, super square, and do the same underneath. So I kind of take this and tilt it up and run it under so that I have that, you know, it doesn't look so, and those are little hairs. I can't do anything about that. Once I go in with the brow gel, it'll kind of put those in place. But same over here, so I kind of take it right from where I know like my eyebrow should start and I just swoop and then loop it around a little bit so it fades it down. And then same thing, kind of tilt the brush and just remove any of that extra. Like if I didn't want to have to do anything else, I would just leave it like that. Okay, then I go in with the brow gel. Always set your brows so that whatever you're doing throughout the day, they're going to stay in place. So I go in with the Morphe. I come in the front first, and this is where I kind of just push because I have so many of my natural little hairs right there. So I just kind of take that and push them up. And then once I get to like that spot where I started, I just drag it back. Don't push too hard with the gel or you're going to remove everything you just did. Like it's barely touching my brow, just enough to hit the hairs. Okay, same over here. I push up so that all those natural hairs just look perfect right there. Come to where I started and barely let that hit my hairs so that it holds them all in place.